So, greetings, everyone. We have some people joining us still, but we're going to go ahead and start. So, thank you for joining us from Miami's Public Research University, and welcome to FIU in Washington, D.C., Miami's embassy in the nation's capital here. My name's Kenrick Chioka, and I'm a Hamilton Scholar with FIU, working on Everglades restoration with Dr. Todd Crowell. I'm currently studying political science and international relations, and I'll be graduating December 19th. So right now I'm interning on the Hill with
Hire Kenny.
hire Kenny, looking for jobs. I'm interning on the Hill with Representative Kathy Castor, who represents the Tampa region. And thank you for being here. On behalf of FIU and our partners at the Everglades Foundation, we're excited to bring us all together for a dialogue with such important partners focused on important areas like emerging technologies and the health of the Everglades. So we hope to shine some light on our important collaboration with our local, state, and tribal governments and the very important federal investments that are driving restoration. As a Hamilton Scholar, I've been proud to help advocate with Dr. Todd Crowell and so many leaders at FIU, which is the state's university in the state's University of Distinction in Environmental Resilience. We're thankful for our congressional delegation, so many who will be represented here today that have been supporting our key projects, our collaboration with the Army Corps on restoration research. Soon we'll be breaking ground on a $9 million NIST environmental robotics facility at Biscayne Bay campus, thanks to the support of Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. Thanks to the support of Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, we are moving forward on a 3-county saltwater intrusion detection network. And of course, our entire delegation has been strong supporters of the South Florida Geographic Program at EPA, which supports our water quality testing work in Biscayne Bay. So our final shout out is to Congresswoman Maria Salazar, who supported the Buoy Network with the community project appropriation too. In addition to convening important dialogues like this here today at FIU in DC, most of you have come to know we're focused on advocating for and celebrating the impact of our federal research. So before you leave, definitely interact with our wall here, in particular the Everglades Hub. So we'll go ahead and mess with this later, show you guys how to use that.
Some stuff down there.
Yeah. But we have Resilience Everglades and a bunch of our other federal initiatives on there. And of course, another focus is supporting our students' success. So here with us today, we have a visiting group of students focused on humanities, our humanities fly-in. And it is now my honor to introduce Dr. Todd Crowell, who leads our Institute of Environment. So,
Thanks very much, Kenny. And folks people online can hear us okay? Daniel, good? Okay. All right, well, thanks very much. People will be trickling in. There are a bunch of meetings. We're here the day before the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force meeting, and so folks are getting ready for that, and so people will be wandering in as we go. Thank you for coming. One of the things we wanted to do, we like to hold these sort of community public events when we've got an opportunity to partner with some other event that we have going on. And one of the things that's hot on all of our minds, Kenny mentioned that we've been very fortunate to get a $9 million earmark to build a new building funded through the NIST program for robotics, autonomous vehicles, and environmental sensing. So we're going to sort of push the forefront of autonomous vehicles and collecting water quality data, fisheries data. We've got folks from the Tarpon Trust here, and so we're very excited about that. But what we want to do today is just highlight some examples of ways people are using some of the new technologies like artificial intelligence, marine machine learning, and robotics and stuff like that. I want to recognize Dr. Nick Allman, a longtime friend and colleague. Nick is the Regional Science Advisor for the Southeast region of the U.S. Geological Survey and oversees the Greater Everglades Priority Ecosystem Science Program. He worked for the National Park Service. He's worked for South Florida Water Management District. So certainly a fixture in South Florida ecosystems and ecology.
Good job.
Yeah, yeah. There are a couple ways to think about that. He's either moving up or just keeping alive. So Nick, and Nick helped me organize this, and I'll introduce a couple of his collaborators and colleagues in a minute. So, and Nick, thank you very much for your support. Okay, let's pull the people up online. Yeah, we got CNN today. So thank you. You guys can see us okay and hear us all right? So I'll just start from the way I see you. We're very happy to have joining us Dr. Philip Tissot, one of my newest collaborators. Philip is the Conrad Blucher Institute Chair for Coastal Artificial Intelligence at Texas A&M University. He is a co-leader of a big national consortium funded by the National Science Foundation. We call AI2ES, Artificial Intelligence to Environmental Sciences. So it's a consortium of universities that is initiated from the University of Oklahoma and their Weather Climate Center. And then Phillips Center at Texas A&M and FIU is part of that. And it's been a really wonderful new consortium and collaboration. So Philip will talk to us about some of the stuff that he's been doing, he and his students, associated with AI in the Gulf Coast. Then we have Amanda Kissel from the USGS. Dr. Kissel is a quantitative population ecologist in the invasive species branch at the USGS in Fort Collins. Antona Abbey is next. Wave, Antona, from the Everglades Foundation. Antona is a hydrogeologist. He does a lot of the important hydrologic modeling associated with Everglades restoration. That's really the key, is getting enough clean, fresh water to sort of rehydrate the Everglades and keep the flows and the nutrients balances going. We're particularly proud of Antona. He's one of FIU PhD student. He was one of our very first PhDs who got his degree through our National Science Foundation Center of Excellence in Research, Science, and Technology. So thank you for coming, Antona. And then we have Dr. Amy Yackel Adams, also from the U.S. Geological Survey in the invasive species branch at Fort Collins. So thank you all so much for joining us. I think, Amanda, I'll start with you and give us just a little bit of an overview of what you're doing and how you're using new technologies.
All right, sounds good. And let me see if I can share my screen here. All right, can everyone see that okay? And hear me okay?
Great.
Awesome.
Yes, we do.
All right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, it's awesome to be here today. I appreciate the invitation to talk about our project, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how we're using artificial intelligence to monitor for invasive tegu lizards in the Greater Everglades ecosystem. So this figure here is known as the invasion curve, and you can see that the best opportunity to eradicate an invasive species is down here in the green just after a species is introduced. And as a result, there's a lot of effort being put into developing tools for what is known as early detection and rapid response, or EDRR for invasive species. And the hope is that new technologies such as image detection algorithms developed using AI can be useful EDRR tools. And so we're applying this technology to monitor for these invasive lizards in the Greater Everglades. So you might be wondering what a tegu lizard is. They're relatively large lizards that are native to South America. They're popular in the pet trade, and it's believed that they were released or escaped from captivity and established in Florida in 2008. And they're dietary and habitat generalists, and they're known to prey on eggs of native species, so they are of management concern. And so to date, they've been kept largely out of Everglades National Park and Big Cypress National Preserve. So on this map down here, each of those points represents a tegu sighting, and you can see that they're largely outside of the boundaries of those two parks. But it's really hard to monitor these vast areas with limited people power and resources, and this is where those AI image algorithms can help improve efficiency. So our goal here is to increase our ability to detect tegus in new areas while decreasing the human capacity needed to do so. So in theory, we can deploy cameras for long periods of time and analyze the images collected on the cameras using an image detection algorithm, which significantly reduces the number of people needed to conduct on-the-ground surveys or sift through thousands of images. So here's the workflow we're developing. First, camera traps are deployed in an area of interest. These cameras transmit photos in real time over a cell or satellite network and can be downloaded to a server. From there, they're run through an image detection algorithm, and if a tegu is detected, the jurisdictional authorities, for example, Everglades National Park biologists, can be notified so that they can deploy traps in the area and remove them. So the key aspect here is to have an image detection algorithm that is highly trained to identify tegus. Over the past year, we've been working with Dan Morris, who developed a general wildlife image detection algorithm called Megadetector for Microsoft. And this general model, we tested it and it was able to identify about half of the tegus and images that we fed it. So we leveraged over 2 million photos that have been collected by USGS at long-term tegu monitoring stations to retrain this algorithm. And this updated model was able to identify 92% of tegus and quickly read out nearly 15,000 images that were not tegus in a test dataset. However, this dataset was not independent as the images had been used to train the model, and we wanted to understand how it would perform on an independent dataset. So we used it to identify tegus from cameras that we deployed in Everglades National Park that were not used to develop the model. And this plot on the bottom shows the different sites where cameras were deployed on the x-axis, and the number of days tegus were observed on the y-axis. And we compared the number of tegus observed in the images by humans versus Megadetector, and as you can see, Megadetector did as well, or in some cases better than humans. And in fact, at one of our sites, it identified tegus that were missed by humans. So we're very excited about this potential for this algorithm, and we have several next steps that we're in the process of implementing. The first is to be able to estimate the probability that a tegu would go undetected in an area of interest with varying numbers of cameras and deployment times. And this will allow us to develop guidance for the number of cameras and the length of time that they should be deployed to ensure that a tegu is detected if it's in the area. We're also continuing to work on that automated pipeline I described earlier. We're working with an organization called Conservation X Labs, and they have developed devices that attach to trail cameras and can either use the cellular or satellite networks to transmit images to a web app. And additionally, what's cool about this is the AI algorithm can be loaded onto the device so that the images are analyzed in real time for tegus. In doing so, we're working with USGS information technology officers to ensure that these devices comply with DOI standards, which ultimately may benefit many other projects within DOI who want to leverage this technology. And then we're continuing to develop the technical infrastructure to be able to notify the appropriate jurisdictional authorities when a tegu is observed. And then finally, I just wanted to point out that this algorithm and technology has potential applications for many other projects. So for example, we're collaborating with a graduate student at the University of Florida, and he used this image detection algorithm to analyze over 750,000 photos for a study on tegu bait preferences. So again, we're really excited about the possibilities ahead, and that's the quick overview I've got for you all, and looking forward to more discussion. Thank you.
Oh, very cool. Thank you very much, Amanda. Amy, did you want to add anything to this or wait for the questions? Or is Amy gone? Amy's gone? Okay.
No, I don't have anything to add at this point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's move a little bit farther east, or quite a bit farther east. Well, I guess these guys are in Fort Collins, but Philip, tell us about some of the things you're doing down in the Gulf area.
All right, let me share my screen. Hopefully you can see it and hear me.
Oh, good.
All right, yeah, so I'm Philip Tissot. I'm in Texas. I'm at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi, the chair for coastal artificial intelligence at the Conrad Lucher Institute. And I work a lot on two large NSF grants. One, the AI Institute that includes coastal oceanography, and the other one with my FIU colleagues on the Collaborative for Southeast Florida Coastal Environmental Data and Modeling Center. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the coastal AI that we've been working on. So first, the why. And so that's my slide for rationale for AI on the coast. The coast is the intersection of atmosphere, ocean, land. There's nonlinear dynamic taking place, and you have to match what's happening in land, ocean, and atmosphere. And it's not easy with classic model. And so AI is very much at home as long as you have enough data. We work on coastal inundation, on coastal fog, on sea turtle conservation. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. But first, one slide to tell you how those models are working, sort of view from above. So you have to have consistent data. The data is so important for AI. And so consistent data for us, we have real-time observations that come real-time to our systems. We use numerical weather prediction. We use numerical ocean prediction. We use satellite imagery, other parameters, and we feed all that data into a neural net. And then we try to predict something that is of importance to a stakeholder. Fog, inundation, cold stunning. And in the middle, you have these AI, the sort of simplified view, a bunch of small computational units that are based on a function, like the bottom on the right. And for each input, you have a weight, you have a biases, you have a bunch of parameters. And if you have a lot of data, then you can use a training algorithm that's going to use those weights and biases to create a good map between all the data that you have and the output, the prediction that you want to make, and that's going to help decision makers. So a couple of examples. The first one is about sea turtles and fisheries along the Texas coast. The Laguna Madre is along the coast of Texas and has a lot of sea turtles, good foraging grounds. But during cold front in the winter, the temperature can drop very quickly. And if it's a very strong cold front, it can cold stun the sea turtles. We have a fantastic group that's ready to help, interrupt navigation, dredging, volunteers ready to come to help, but you have to tell them in advance. You need 3, 4, 5 days ahead of time. And so to be able to do that, we calibrated an artificial intelligence neural net. And then I'm going to show you an example. This is an event that took place. We've had one event per year over the past 4 years. This was in February 2022. The red line here is the now line. On the right, you have a blue line that is the air temperature measurements, the most recent air temperature measurements. The black line are the water temperature measurements. And the dashed black line here are the water temperature predictions from the AI. And we have a threshold. This is a threshold for sea turtle. We also have a threshold for fisheries. And we're using the AI to predict when the threshold is going to be breached and for how long. And so 3-4 days ahead of time, we start gathering with Coast Guard, barge operators, National Park, and we help. So the AI is critical to be able to mitigate the impact of these extreme events that may become actually more frequent. And the second and last example is coastal inundation. And so for coastal inundation, it's really changed over the past 6-7 years. The local judges, counties, rural counties in particular, experience those coastal inundation events. And the data that we have from the national backbone, state national backbone, and the regional model may not be exactly what they need. So we're deploying low-cost water level sensors. You have an example here in the image, one of my students deploying one in that location with the yellow-red dot. And so this sensor is important for a couple of reasons. On the bottom, you see a lake and a large bay. And it turns out that the inundation is coming from the lake rather than a large bay. But there's a long delay between the bay and that large lake and that lake. It takes about 5 hours for peak water levels to go from the bay to the lake. And so we discovered that thanks to the sensor. Now, what we're doing with AI is that we want to keep those sensors for, let's say, for 2-3 years in those critical locations. And we're training AI models to predict what the sensor would look if there was no sensors, and we're also making predictions. So on the bottom right here, you have an AI prediction of what the sensor would read and what's going to happen to the water levels in the next couple of days. And we also try to work with stakeholders to get threshold and see what do they need, how do they want it visualized, what's important to them. And so that's the heart of our research. So, and we are doing also compound flooding research now with RFIU. And so what happens if you also include groundwater, which in Florida is super important, of course. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Phil. Perfect segue. So, Antona, tell us about some of your hydrologic modeling and how you're using some of these new techniques to help us understand Everglades restoration.
Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you hear me?
Yep. That's good.
Thank you, Todd. Well, thanks for organizing this event. It's very important. Here at the Everglades Foundation, well, I would like to say, though, just everybody knows why we care about the Everglades, because more than half of its natural wetland has been changed for land acquisition, for urban development, infrastructure, and of course agricultural development. And what that did is not only we lost half of the Everglades, but it gave us a lot of source of pollution to the coastal areas and estuaries. Therefore, that gave the birds of surf, where we are dealing with more than 60 big projects distributed across South Florida. This comprehensive restoration project is informed by physics-based models mostly, and somehow these physics-based models fail to capture what's happening on the ground condition. If you see what I am doing here, I would like to start with this plot on the right lower corner. This is just a hypothetical plot that you would see when a model simulates a result and compare it with the ground condition. You would like to see more these scatter plots condensed near to the base feed line. And of course, that base feed line also should have a very much similarity with the one-to-one correspondence line. But if you have distributed scatter plots like this, your model is not actually doing good, or it's not representing the ground condition. And given that, the National Research Council in their 2022 and even 2024 Progress Towards Everglades Restoration report recommended that moving forward, we need to advance our modeling, especially the physics-based models, in order to capture a wide range of hydrological management scenarios, but also address and incorporate climate change as a driver, as well as sea level rise. So this has been very complicated to be able to address within the physics-based models that we have. Therefore, at the Everglades Foundation, we start around 2021, we start to see how we can implement AI and answer and provide some of these questions. So this was a paper that was published to forecast salinity using feed-forward neural network model in Florida Bay. So I'm presenting two works that are dealing with sequential time series data here. And the other thing that we recently completed, not published yet, is we actually developed a suite of modeling protocols or frameworks that can develop AI models. And actually, one of these is water level in the Everglades National Park. So I just plotted an example here. We have run multiple structures and locations, and it performs very well. And in terms of a three-dimensional modeling approach, we have a project with FIU where a PhD student is working on climate downscaling, applying AI, very complicated algorithms, and the student is doing a great job. I borrowed these graphics from his recent progress. So what we see here is the low resolution original data that we have during through CONUS 404, and CONUS 404 is downscaled using AI techniques into a higher resolution. We still have to work on this. This is a work in progress. As well as recently we have launched in-house at the Everglades Foundation to develop model that will reproduce the EDEN database, the Everglades Depth Estimation Network. But it will be compiling additional drivers such as climate change and sea level rise to estimate water depths across the Everglades, but also outside in the coastal areas. And this is very fascinating, and we expect this will be a game changer. And I see some students and young fish in the room. You guys are welcome to reach out to us, communicate, and we're happy to share what we know and make this AI as part of an integral restoration project component. This is my email account, and the QR code will lead you to our website. That's all. Back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Antonio. So before we get started on some more general questions, does anybody have any specific questions? So you've heard the three different people talking about specific projects. Does anybody have any specific questions about their research topics before we open it up a little bit? Okay. All right. So I'm going to throw out this general question. I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, and a lot of us think about, is, you know, AI has sort of hit the world by storm, and we know all the kinds of things it can do. You know, it can take kids' tests for them. It can generate application letters. I'm not even sure I believe any of the letters of application that I get anymore. You can almost all see them. But from a positive perspective, for the kinds of things we do, how do you see new technologies, and not just AI and machine learning, but robotics and autonomous vehicles and all the new technologies? What doors do these new technologies open? What questions are we going to be able to answer and ask using some of the new technologies? And I'll start with Amanda and Amy from your guys' perspective. I mean, what does it do? Does it increase the amount of sampling, the time spent? What does it do for us?
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on with you know, the ability of AI to increase the amount of sampling we can do, and to increase you know, just the general types of observations and stuff that we can get. So yeah, with the Tegu AI example, you know, it has already saved a lot of time in terms of the amount of effort it takes to look through all of those images. And so, you know, because we have more time from that perspective, that can be used to collect other types of data, answer different questions that we have, things like that. And, you know, we're also looking at new technologies such as drones to track pythons in the Everglades. And that, again, is going to save a lot of labor in the field, and also allow us to just, you know, get data, collect data in different ways, and look at new perspectives than we've been able to in the past. And I'll turn it over to Amy to add anything else.
Amanda, I think you covered it. For us, the big game changer will be taking those labor savings of field biologists and reallocating it to other invasive issues in the greater Everglades.
Yes, Nick Allman, USGS. I think another advantage that we don't think about is when we go out in the field, I think we're burning fuel at airboats and vehicles and boats and airplanes, and I think this all has a big possibility of reducing our carbon footprint when we're actually doing some of the things to alleviate the problems that you know, that we're trying to solve here, rather than making them worse. So that's one thing we don't often think about, in addition just to the practical people power and saving money on you know, on people's time and be able to devote that time somewhere else, but reducing our overall footprint.
Thanks, Nick. That's an excellent point.
Good point. Antona, what do you think? What are you able to do now that you couldn't have done 5 years ago?
I think we deal with models, and physics-based models are restricted by a number of factors, and we have lots of constraints that we put on and force the model to produce what we envision for, and that hides what's in the hidden information within the system. So AI, instead of restrictions, will allow us to combine and assimilate information from different sources and see hidden patterns and learn things that we have not learned in the past. And this is very exciting. Like you said, being able to collect more data and analyze. In our case, we develop the models. It takes developing the models takes a couple of days to run and finish, optimize, but once the models are developed, running it is a matter of seconds. So you can just put it online and be able to run it and even have real-time information based on the model that's already developed. This is not possible using physics-based models. So AI will have a lot of benefits, and the future is exciting.
Yep, very good. And Philip, I mean, from your perspective, I mean, coastal hydrology, coastal storms prediction is it's a huge issue. But so, where are the big breakthroughs for you?
Well, I'll start by reinforcing what Antoinette just said. Live, real-time live predictions, live models. Once the models are trained, they're super efficient. And so in terms of a live digital twin, I think AI is going to be the sort of the technology that can make it happen better. So also that AI for the environment is not that recent. Started in the mid 80s. We started in the late 90s. What's changed is the amount of data and the computational power and the advent of deep learning. These past few years, this has sped up so much that it's kind of exciting. It's very exciting and sometimes eye-opening. I would say, yeah, the more data, the more compute, the flexibility that AI gives you to model in the coastal environment. And then finally, what I always try to do is have a competition between the pure AI model and the physics model. And you're looking for something that's going to reason a little differently. You know, why is AI better? What can we gain for how AI does our prediction? And that's a lot of fun to work on that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good. So I'm bringing out, I don't know if you guys can see this, Antona and Philip and stuff. This is, yeah. So Philip, you touched on it, the sheer amount of data. So this is a buoy that we designed with a couple of private companies to measure water quality. And we have a network of about 9 of these now, I think, throughout the Florida Keys as well as Biscayne Bay. You know, we had some serious fish kills and we'll have them again. But this buoy collects about 24 parameters every 2 minutes. Right? I mean, it's an enormous amount of data that we collect, and I'll do a demonstration later to pull one of these up. These data are live. Anybody can access them, anybody can see them, and so you can look at the health of Biscayne Bay. But the sheer amount of data that is collected by a network of 9 or 10 of these things is overwhelming. I mean, you just can't apply the standard statistical test to it after a month or 2 months of this, right? So I think the amount of data that you can collect and analyze using these new machine learning and deep learning techniques and finding relationships that we wouldn't have thought of, right? Surrogate relationships with data. The other thing is we talked about building an autonomous vehicle and robotics facility. One of the things we're doing a lot of these days is 3D printing coral reefs and bringing back living shorelines. So we're retrofitting a lot of the seawalls in Florida with 3D printed eco-friendly concrete, building tiles with all kinds of different crevices and stuff to provide habitat for invertebrates and basically fish food and other kinds of things. So you could spend hundreds and hundreds of hours snorkeling and diving to count the number of fish that are using this, to look at the invertebrates that are colonizing these, to measure success. I can send out one submersible autonomous vehicle to drive up and down about, 2 or 3 kilometers of seawalls over an hour, send the data back to AI algorithms like Amanda was talking about, and quantify and identify all of the invertebrates associated with these new retrofitted living seawalls in a day. Right? I mean, it would have taken months and months to collect and analyze that kind of data. So I think those are the kinds of things that I'm really excited about. And then the last thing I want to ask you guys about, Philip, when you and I and Jason Liu were talking about this stuff, you guys often use the terminology trustworthy AI, and there's this notion of trust and what is trustworthy, and how do we communicate these new technologies and things that we're creating with this new technology and artificial intelligence. And for some people, it's just a scary notion of artificial intelligence. And what is it doing? Is it just generating stuff that's not real? We have enough problems in society with trusting basic science that you can actually see and touch and feel. And now we're in the realm of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Let me know your thoughts about how to effectively communicate what we do and your notion of trustworthy AI.
So for us, first we study it. I think the relationship between humans and AI is going to evolve fast. And right now we're kind of in the sunshine. It's the brand new toy and very exciting. But indeed, we think that people are going to be somewhat worried about it, already starting. I think the key for us is AI also allows you to probably develop things a little faster, and you can bring the stakeholder, you can bring the user earlier for loss functions and the sort of the inputs. And so for us, the answer is to try to build convergence teams that involve the user, the stakeholder very early on, develop with them the model. And so they are the ones, they already tell us what they may be worried about. They also become then the ambassadors for the model. And that allows us to really study this relationship. We work with social scientists and they sort of guide us. What is the relationship between man and AI, and how can it make work it best? And the environmental model, AI model, I think are very good because there's a truth behind it. So that's how we're tackling it. So we think it's very important, and that's how we're trying to tackle it.
Yeah, very cool. Anthony, yeah, I mean, the Everglades group of stakeholders and interested parties is like almost beyond my imagination. How many people and organizations and governments are involved in all of this? So when you walk into a room and say you've got a new model, and you found new relationships, and we've been doing things not as well as we could have, but here's a new answer. How do you communicate that? What are the challenges you faced using new technologies?
I think this is a very important question. Just as much as developing the model, it should be used and therefore should be trusted by the stakeholders. So what we're doing is to be able to define what the input variables are and what the drivers are. So in terms of trustworthiness, we focus on being able to explain it. So an explainable AI is trustworthy. So to be able to explain your AI model, you need to know what is driving it behind. Back in the days, AI models suffer from black box nature, that you don't know what's going on. You just have input data and output, which looks very fancy. At this point, we're able to pull out the hidden information and see why X is changing the output X prime, or one input. So therefore, the ability to explain your model using the drivers is what will bring the trustworthiness in the hydrologic field.
Yep. And Amanda, Amy, same idea. I mean, often when we're talking about invasive species, we go out and do our annual or quarterly or whatever census, but that not real-time approach, we miss the invasion fronts, we miss some of the drivers that maybe knock back invasion numbers. How do you guys communicate the new things you're doing?
I think in part, platforms like this are a great way for us to communicate what we're doing. I think, working closely with our National Park Service colleagues and others who are interested in managing for tegus, explaining the issue, explaining, how this technology really helps us, and working with them to deploy it in a way that works within their sort of guidelines and frameworks is really important. And I think, when you're deploying these types of technologies in public places like national parks, you can get some, skeptical visitors wondering what are these cameras doing out here and stuff like that. So I think, having a component where you're communicating to the public the importance of this and how this is really benefiting them is also really important. And one other thing that I've sort of realized in terms of being new to working with AI and working with collaborators is just trying to come up with a common language between, you know, the people who are really developing these algorithms and the biologists who are more used to working like on the ground with animals, as well as, you know, folks like the USGS IT department, and making sure that we're all on the same page and understanding the potentials of this technology, the pitfalls, and how we move forward to maximize success. Amy, anything to add?
No, Amanda, because you provide such extensive answers, which is perfect. So we're good.
Great. Nick, anything to add to any of this?
No, it's just, I think it's an exciting time. It's like you sort of opened with the comment about Chat GPT, you know, not trusting anything. And I remember not too long ago as an employee of the federal government, I used Chat GPT to write an introduction sort of as an example of Chat GPT for a speaker. And it got some things wrong, and it was kind of funny. But then somebody said, you're not supposed to use Chat GPT for the government. We can't do that, you know, because, you know, all bad things will happen from that. I'm paraphrasing, I'm making that up. But now it's okay. Now we have a government site for Chat GPT. So we're catching up. We always seem to take a little longer than we should. But I think we can't even think of some of the things this will do for us in the future. We don't know what we don't know yet as far as that goes.
Yeah. You have something?
No, just.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, hi, I'm Rita Titanico, Florida International. Yeah, my whole thing is quality control. Like, I've heard a lot of talks about AI and generative AI especially, and it's like if you don't know if there's quality control of the data that went in, how do you know that what came out is actually useful and valid? So that's, yeah, I mean, more data is better, but not if it's not all quality controlled and good data. So that's what makes me nervous about a lot of people using it. I mean, you guys are experts, but a lot of people are using it, and it's my concern is the quality control.
Somebody want to respond?
Philip's shaking his head.
Antonella?
I agree with what just said. The quality control with the input data is a very important part that also makes it explainable. So if you are able to explain it, then communicate it in a way that people will perceive it. There is this understanding of physics-based models that it has been for very long. And it's going to take time for everybody to actually appreciate it. Everybody wants to do AI models. I don't consider myself as an AI expert, but I try to work on those. But it's, as far as everybody wants to work on it, it's just very hard to accept it. Even when I'm doing it myself, it's very hard for me sometimes to accept what I'm doing. And the only way to accept is to quality QA/QC your input data and be able to explain why your output is the way it is, given you can explain the input data. So I totally agree with what Rita said.
Amanda, Philip, anything to add to that?
I'll add that we spend 2/3, 3/4 of our time with the data. And so as compared to ChatGPT, we have very carefully curated data sets that train our model. Also, I always, with my students, we set up competition between a pure AI type model and a physics-based model where the physics is used in the architecture or other parts. And so far, whenever you plug in the physics, it always wins. But maybe, who knows, maybe someday with more computational power, maybe data, but at present, the combination of physics and AI wins over just pure AI.
Amanda, Amy, anything?
I'll just add, for things like invasive species, the stakes can be pretty high if our, image detection algorithm isn't working properly. And so that is definitely one of the things that we've been putting a lot of thought into in terms of trying to ensure that this algorithm, doesn't generate what are, known as false negatives, where, a tegu is there, but the model doesn't detect it. And so we're trying to approach it from, several different angles, having interns, check some of these images using different statistical approaches to understand what the detection probability of the AI algorithm is and such. And so it's definitely something that is on the forefront of our minds for this, particularly for the invasive species.
Cue card.
But I gave you the coupons, right?
Okay. Bradley? Welcome. Did you want to introduce yourself or say a few words? Bradley from the Everglades Foundation is here, so and he's a co-sponsor.
Thank you very much, Chad. I'll be extremely brief. Hello, everyone. Apologies for being a little bit tardy. We had a meeting that went long, but I will defer to everything that Antone says. As a science-driven organization, it's folks like Antone and the team of scientists that help guide us in everything that we do. And I appreciate FIU partnering with us and hosting and being out on the front edge of conversations like this. I think it's really important to acknowledge these technological realities and harness them, and also understand, as we just heard, false negatives and pitfalls that may lie ahead. So thank you for being here, and it's a pleasure.
Thanks, Bradley. All right, so you've got 4 of the world's experts leading in technology. You guys have to have some questions. You are the users in the coming up.
Hello, my name is Michaela. I have a question about the invasive species model. I'm wondering if you guys will expand it to be able to detect more invasive species besides the tegu. Like, I know you're the Everglades Foundation, but if you could maybe expand the technology to be in other national preserves and, you know, being able to detect other invasive species in other areas.
Yeah, I do think that this has opened up some opportunities to do that. So, for example, we're using this algorithm called Mega Detector, which was modified to, increase detection of tegus. But in doing so, it's also improved the ability to detect other invasive lizards, sort of just by default. So, working with Dan Morris, who developed the algorithm, he was extremely excited about the opportunity to work with us to do this because these algorithms in the past have not been good at identifying reptiles in general. And now this has just moved that, a step further in terms of improving the technology to be able to detect invasive reptiles. So we hope that, this is sort of a building block to be able to expand to other species as well.
And I'll flip it around. I mean, I've worked on a lot of endangered fish issues and stuff, and endangered species, by definition, are rare. And it's very hard to set up a sampling design and be out there enough to get enough observations to get meaningful data to make predictive models about how endangered species are doing. And this kind of approach where you've got cameras or robots out there searching constantly in real time, I think is going to give us great insight and breakthrough into sort of how to manage endangered species. So sort of the opposite, trying to bring back populations that have been in serious decline. Other questions?
On the topic of invasive species, I know that like most of these invasive species are brought, by humans. Sometimes, random people come traveling with these animals from across the world, and somehow they end up in the Everglades. And I was just wondering how, through AI or just through any type of technology, you can, I guess, prevent new invasive species showing up in the Everglades.
Yeah, Amy, do you want to take a stab at that one? I don't want to
Sure.
airtime.
Yeah, I would say right now that is not being leveraged, and it certainly could be. So I feel like what this reminds me of is with eDNA and how folks would sample the environment for a particular species. And now with metabarcoding, you can sample for a wide host. You can sample the community of species. And so Amanda alluded to this, that the algorithms can be developed to identify a wider suite. And I feel like there's great opportunity for that. But currently, this is not adequately leveraged. Amanda and I have had to like really scrape hard to get funding to even go down this path. And there's great urgency beyond Florida as detections of tegu lizard numbers increase throughout the entire Southeast. So it's an important tool that is really underutilized for invasives at this point. But hopefully we're changing that trajectory.
Yeah, I'll give you an example from the Great Lakes. So because of, when big ships come and they go through the locks and go through the Great Lakes, they have ballast water. And the way you get through the locks and stuff is you have to make the boat heavier, lighter, heavier. So when you come across the ocean and you had filled up your ballast water in Asia, and then you come into Lake Erie and you have to dump that water so that you can float in the shallow locks, we dumped all these Asiatic clams. And those clams wreaked havoc on the ecosystems. So now there are laws that every ship has to have their ballast water tested before they can release it into the Great Lakes, and that's because of eDNA and barcoding. And then on the opposite side, a project we've just started over the last few years is the illegal shark trade. So most shark fishing in lots of places is illegal, especially for selling it as a commercial foodstuff, the fins and stuff. And so we're developing now barcodes to try to identify where the sharks are coming from so that we can get back to the sources of where the illegal fishing is happening. And so these kinds of technologies and the rapidity with which you can take a water sample and quickly say there are 17 species of bacteria and algae that we got to be careful about is really quite remarkable, right? And so there's huge human good that can come out of the use of this. Other questions before we wrap up? Yeah.
My name is Emily, and I'm one of the students visiting from FIU from Miami, and I can claim no expertise in anything STEM related. I'm a humanities major. But I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about pushback, if there is any that you're encountering, or any obstacles, whether that be internally in your field or, just simple challenges that you've had to overcome using these AI models, any tweaks that you've had to done. Again, I can claim no expertise, but I'm very much intrigued. And I think it's very important that we do bring this conversation to things outside of our field. So I do thank you for that.
Anybody?
I can give, one of our models, the model for the sea turtle has been operational since 2009. And people really didn't care that it was AI for a long, long time. Some of my stakeholders around 2020, 2021 said, oh, so is this really, is this artificial intelligence? And so now people are aware. And at present, I would say that in the sciences, folks and our stakeholders are relatively excited that it's artificial intelligence. I think the sort of fear towards AI or the worries of what AI is going to do, it's probably going to be more on the ChatGPT side, on the large language model. And then for us, we're definitely aware of it. We're expecting it. And I think that's a lot of groundwork is happening now. I think in the sciences, if we work with our stakeholders, and we are very transparent how we do those processes. We try to explain how the models work. Hopefully, that's going to alleviate potential worries about using AI because it's so powerful and we can do so much with it. So that's where we're at.
Amanda?
Yeah, I share Felipe's response. There is no much pushback at this point. In our side, we are just promoting that the district and the core needs to jump into this, but we are showing examples of the work. So not so much resistance yet. But like Philip said, the challenge would be if we are dependent on ChatGPT or other robotics that people say it's going to take humanity, so and so forth. This is not that kind of AI. We are doing the models that has been done in the past, using different methods, different algorithms, so statistics and physics and so on and so forth. So this is just a substitute or an addendum to what has been there already. So I think it's so when I say it's exciting because what we had in the past is going to be improved better. It's not going to be a new introduction or an outbreak. Over.
Great. Amanda, anything to add?
Oh, yeah, I can give a quick example from some of our work. So, like I mentioned, we work in Everglades National Park and Big Cypress National Preserve, and Everglades National Park. There's a lot of a wilderness area, and in the wilderness areas, there's a this idea and regulations around how much technology you can actually put out there and leave out there, because it's balancing that desire for it to be a wild place that is undisturbed. But, we also want to try to prevent tegus from invading and disrupting the ecosystem. So, we've had to work with the Park Service to try to figure out how we deploy these cameras in a way that's also not going to, disturb visitor use. And then, outside of parks, oftentimes there's a risk of people messing with the cameras, stealing with the cameras, stuff like that. So that's a challenge in terms of, deploying the technology on the ground, but not necessarily with the AI part of it specifically.
Other questions? Time for one more, maybe? Anybody? All right, so Kenny, you kicked us off. Your reputation is you hang around the Hill, you rub elbows with the powerful people in town. I guess there are some of those in this town. And so from your wanderings around the sacred halls of Congress, tell me about the policymakers and where are they on this stuff, and how are they going to support or not support our ability to do some of these large restoration conservation programs?
So I would say the support, we have overwhelming bipartisan support from the Florida congressional delegation. And it's really about just bringing it to tangible importance, whether we're talking about AI, restoration, separate together, and making it known that this is about our drinking water supply. It's about keeping us from flooding. It's about restoring the historic flow. And there's a lot of support behind that. It's just how you frame it and knowing who you're talking to and how they approach their policy making and how their constituents are going to take that. So it's all about framing, in my view, on how you're going to go about dealing with policymakers and how you go about your advocacy.
Very good.
We have a question in the back. Here, I'll give it the mic, Todd, if you want.
Thank you. Gina Ralph, Corps of Engineers. Do you ever frame it with regard to the resiliency it's providing?
Yes. So a big thing that I've noticed is not only is it about environmental resilience, but disaster resilience. So the district for the representative I work for was just hit by 2 hurricanes. So it's about framing it in ways that people can buy in, because not everybody will buy into environment and climate, but they will buy into disaster resilience and making sure the communities are safe and they can be inhabited. So resilience is definitely key here, and it's the words you use prior to resilience.
Anybody else? All right. Well, as always, I want to thank Carlos Becerra and his team, Daniel, who runs all the brains behind the operation, and Michelle and Kenny for pulling this together, and Bradley for giving us the impetus to put this together. Nick, thank you so much for stepping in and helping me get this organized. And especially thank you, Antona, Philip, Amanda, Amy. Thanks so much for such short notice and such great presentations. Sorry you're not here to lift a glass of wine with us, but one of these days. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.